This is Buffalo State Data Talk, the podcast where we introduce you to how data is used and explore careers that involve data.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Buffalo State Data Talk. I'm your host, Brian Barry, and we appreciate you joining us for episode 9. Today, we'll be talking to Kimberly Herrington, a data journalist at a large healthcare insurer, a creator of Buffalo Business Intelligence, and Western New York WiFiWarriors.com. Kim has recently been awarded the world title of 2020 Data Literacy Advocate of the Year and was recognized as one of the 20 emerging leaders in 2020 for big data, data science, and analytics. Last month, Kim was named as one of the 60 data changemakers to know in 2021. Thanks for joining us today, Kim.
Hi, Brian. It's an honor to be here with you.
So let's begin by having you tell us about what kind of work a data journalist does. As a data journalist, what are your main job responsibilities?
Sure. Well, as a data journalist in life at work, but also outside in the community, I have a great marriage of the things that I absolutely love to do, which is helping other people tell stories using their data and information.
Since data journalist probably wasn't necessarily a thing when you were making your decision for a career path, what did you plan to be when you so-called grew up?
That's a good question. So, believe it or not, when I was a kid, I actually really wanted to be a physician. And I went my entire career path getting ready to take the MCAT. And I went to SUNY Oswego for my undergrad. And I was, going for pre-med there. And I happened to take business courses, though, as well. And I really learned that the business side was actually very much more my speed. And along that way, I also joined a student-run volunteer ambulance, which took me on another pathway into student government activities to try to raise more money for our ambulance. And so there was a wide variety of things that I experienced in college, and it's hard to believe that those things come into what I'm doing now. You would never believe that the improv troupe that you were having fun with in college could actually have a major impact later on in your future. That ability to tell stories and be able to use that narrative to do what I do now has been absolutely essential. Those business minor courses that I picked up, those are the ones that actually taught me to know what executives are looking for and really hone in on communication and understanding people's perceptions, which helps me tell better data stories.
That improv sounds like a lot of fun. So switching gears up a little bit, as a teacher, I often ask my students what skills or education they need to join a certain career path. Can you tell me what you think are the most important hard skills and most important soft skills when working in your field?
Sure. I think you definitely have to have a strong understanding of the environment in which you are hoping to have your data make an impact within. If you want to be a data scientist in the healthcare field, then you're going to want to need to know a lot about the healthcare field. So definitely getting that larger knowledge base. So those 101 courses that you might be taking, students right now, I'm sorry, I know, but trust me, they are important to pay attention to. You never know when you're going to use that 101 material, and save all of your books. If I turn my camera to the side here, you'd be able to see my wall of books between my husband and my own undergrad. We've saved it all. We saved all of our notes. I've gone back to them.
Yeah, I agree with that statement too.
Right? You never know when you're going to need that kind of stuff. And it helps make, brain pathways of being able to take two seemingly unrelated things and put them together. Soft skills in particular, I would recommend is you have to be an excellent communicator. You have to be very, very curious, and you have to be good at critical thinking.
Nice. So now I'd like to talk about what a day or a week in the life of a data journalist looks like. Is your schedule the same every day, or does it vary?
It definitely varies every single day. And for me, that's what I like. I like variety. So what I do have every week though is time blocked out. It's called SOS sessions, story or strategy sessions. Think of it like office hours, that if somebody wants to drop in or ask me a question, they know that they're not going to bother me because this is that time that's actually booked for them. Come to me and ask questions. Anyone can come. They could have just met me, they could have never met me before, and they can use that time to ask me questions. That's my time to do that. Then also, I can get pulled into meetings with everyone from, like I said, someone working with customers all the way up to the highest executive levels to talk about things. I also do trainings for things like data literacy. I mentioned earlier, I'm very, very humbled to have won that Data Literacy Advocate of the Year award. When it was going up, I was just hoping to make the best in Buffalo, and then I won the whole thing, and I was just absolutely shocked.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
It was crazy. Alberto Cairo, who wrote How Charts Lie, won last year. So I'm just like, I'm like, are you sure? that, yeah. So, it was just really, really an honor, especially because I am only here because of the people that I found in my network and LinkedIn. I'm only here because of people like Miko Yuck, Jordan Morrow, and Val Logan, who is a Buff State alumni. She owns the Data Lodge and talks all about data literacy. This woman brought data literacy to the largest data company that knows data.
I think she was a part of the speaker
Yes.
series too, and her presentation was great. So when you have meetings, what type of things do you talk about?
So in meetings, we talk about a few things. They can be conversations, they can be consultations, I can be validating what someone has done, I can be revitalizing them to kind of breathe new life into what they're working on, and I can be there kind of just to inspire them. So it depends on what the person has come to me for as to what the meetings will entail. When someone's coming to me with a dashboard or a data visualization and they're looking for support, I will go into it and I'll typically, ask them to give me an overview of the what, the so what, and the now what for that visual. So that's all through BI Brain's storytelling classes, identifying the what as in what's the greater context of what you're trying to do to accomplish here, and what are the key findings, the so what, why do those things matter, and the now what, now that someone has looked at this visual, what do you want them to do? And is that clear in this visual? Because again, to have actionable information, you have to show the user what actions they could take after viewing this information, right?
Right. So when you report on what you're doing, what are the things that other people are interested in when hearing about your work?
Ooh, that's a good question. So for when I'm reporting on it, usually I keep track of just the number of people that I help and if they found a value within it and whatnot, showing them where they started in a journey versus where they ended. They like seeing the transition, right? Everyone loves a good before and after photo. You'd be surprised how far changing the font styles of a visual and using color in particular, one of my favorite things to do, trying to limit it to 3 colors. There's always exceptions, but where possible, I try to use just 3 colors. But my cheat is that I use shades of black. My favorite color of any color is my hex code D4, D4, D4 for life. It is the thinnest of thin grays. So it's like barely there gray. And so if you're looking at a picture, it's kind of just like a visual speed bump for the eye, but your eye doesn't take so much time on it. So if you're trying to make borders around things, it just fades to the background. Whereas if somebody has these big, heavy black borders, you think about your eyes only having so much energy to take an ink to weight ratio. So you want to give your biggest, blackest numbers just to the data. So what you're trying to bring people's eyes' attention to, get the heaviest ink, versus things that are context information, that can be like those shades of gray. And you can lighten or darken those based on importance because your eye will go to the heaviest, boldest thing. And that's where you want to, draw that attention to.
Yeah, that's really good. So what keeps you motivated to keep doing this every day?
Again, my mission is to help people. And hearing the stories of how things have changed, probably my favorite story of how data has helped some people was I was working at a healthcare organization and was doing, data analysis, and it had to do with the people that took phone calls for healthcare services. Now, when these admissions people were first getting the phone calls, they were dealing with people at their lowest of the low moment, right? Get them scheduled for help. And so, day after day, these phone operators are just getting beaten. And it's tough, right? Because people are swearing at you and they are upset. And it's just so difficult to just get through the day. And they're doing it all year long. So around the end of the year, I had talked to that scheduling supervisor and I said, can I like get you in a report of, how your people have helped? And they said, sure, that would be nice, I think. So I took it a step further and I made each person individualized bookmarks that said how many calls that person has handled in a year. And then of those people that they have spoken to, the percentage of them that actually made it to their first appointment, and then the percentage of people that actually made it through completion of the program. They had never seen that before. They had never gotten the numbers to say, of all the people that you've made those appointments for, what happened to them afterwards. They never got to see the end result. That was my favorite way to show data has an impact because there were tears at that presentation.
Yeah, I can imagine that had a huge impact.
Just that them having the information to know that through their phone they were changing lives and what they were doing was important, feeling validated. That really motivates me. So, I might not necessarily know what the end outcome is going to be from some of this stuff, but I do just trust that it has an impact. I think this would be a good time to actually talk a little bit about how community can have a larger ripple effect, specifically with Buff State, how that has happened. Would that be okay to share that story here?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So, from an earlier conversation that we had, both of us agreed that the data community plays a big role. So how does your work impact our local community?
So through Buffalo Business Intelligence, that was the group I started back in 2017 when I was 9 months pregnant with my first daughter. I started this group because I was upset because I couldn't learn Tableau on my own. And I couldn't find anyone to teach me Tableau. I even contacted a consulting agency to find someone that I could pay out of my own pocket to teach me Tableau. And they couldn't find anyone. And I called Tableau to start a Tableau user group in Buffalo. And they said, nah, you don't have enough licenses in Buffalo. No thanks. And I was,
oh no.
And I was like, okay, all right, fine. But it was so early in Buffalo too that everyone was kind of between Power BI and Tableau. So I'm like, if there's not enough just Tableau, then what if we just did a group for all types of data visualization experts? So that's when I started Buffalo Business Intelligence, and it brought together users of Tableau or Power BI or Dundas or any of these other Sisense, whatever kind of tools that you're using, because ultimately each program is just like a blank canvas where you make different dashboards, different visuals that you're making on it. And you're all going to face the same relative problems at that stage. So I started that group and we started coming together as a community to talk about the skills that we were looking to learn. We talked about the tools we wanted to learn. We talked about the problems or the barriers that we all encountered. And we talked about what would make a good future group meetings. And so through having these sessions, this is actually how I met Joaquim Carbonara. And him and Melissa Brinson actually came to one of these activities. And I remember coming up to them as they were going through the barriers exercise. And Joaquim was looking at Melissa and they're just like, this is awesome. We need more of this in Buffalo. We need a lot more of this type of activity in Buffalo. We've got to do something. And not long after that, Building a Better Buffalo was started at Buff State. And they brought me on to help out with those activities as well. And so I got to know more of the people around Buff State, and I was introduced to Dr. Wendy Mix of your geography department.
Yeah.
Now, you'd think, why would someone in healthcare care anything about geospatial information and geography, right?
Right.
But I saw it with the advent of telemedicine as something that was going to be revolutionary, because we're moving from medicine happening in facilities to medicine being administered at home. And I'm also a huge proponent for social determinants of health, which are the factors by which we live, work, age, and play.
Yep.
And so North Carolina had come up with this index and this creation of like a story map of how to calculate this, social determinants of health, because it's so many different factors, right? It's housing, it's food security. There's so many different factors. So I thought it was really cool what they did over there. And so I just on a whim sent this link to Wendy and I said, Dr. Mix, this is cool. This is my dream. I would love to see something like this in Buffalo, but I don't think it'll happen for years. There is a reason I call Dr. Mix my GIS goddess. Because within a week, she had it built for Buffalo.
That's amazing.
I didn't know that she was a former census worker. I had no idea that she had a history of the census, and she knew that subject matter, and also that she was teaching her students all this stuff with Python and being able to use the maps. She was learning those things. It's just a matter of getting the right question to use her skills. So it was that connection, it was the community connection that actually got her to do all of this, right?
Yeah.
And so from that, as she's building this and we're working back and forth and we're, figuring out how to best optimize this, I saw through my LinkedIn network, Jane Saunderson-Kahn, who writes this Health Populi blog, she had been posting about how internet access should be considered a social determinant of health. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, right.
It's the way that we connect to be able to get access to so many things. It's that front door to so many things. And this is before the pandemic. So this is the summer before the pandemic that this is happening, that we are making this visual. We're talking about social determinants of health. We're looking at this stuff. And again, this is outside of work. This is on my free time because this is what I love to do, is to dive into this stuff. And so Dr. Mix, I show her this piece about broadband, and I ask her to add it into a layer of our analysis, and she does. Now, there's two tracks. This story has ripples in two different directions. The direction I'm going to take on the one hand is a community workshop that we had. So we had on the one direction, we took the social determinants of health and educating people about them and their importance. And we took that to behavioral health community health workers from all different organizations, and we taught them all about social determinants of health, and we taught them how to use this app to have conversations with patients that comes from a stance of give us your zip code. Okay. And then you're looking at the zip code and you see, I see people in your area are experiencing crowded housing. Are you experiencing crowded housing? Rather than, trying to say, do you live in a house with XYZ people? That's invasive, right? No one wants to answer that health question. But if you tell them, your peers in your area are having this issue, are you having it too? It gives you a little bit more way to open up. So we were able to teach a class of people all about this app that we had designed, with Dr. Mix before that, so for their own use. On March 6th was that presentation of 2020. So that was the last time I got to present to a large group of people in person.
I think that was the week before everything shut down, right?
It was indeed. From that, I knew that 18.6% of Western New York didn't have access to the internet. When we first launched the maps, there was a reporter, Nate Benson, who found interest in Dr. Mix's internet broadband layer of the original map. And he and her worked together and then built out a completely separate dashboard all about internet access in Western New York. And now that Nate had those stats and figures, he was able to then, do some more digging and do more investigative journalism for the news on his side and dive in and start talking to legislators and talking to more people. And eventually, he makes this breaking discovery that was actually just announced in December of 2020, that in the southern tier, There was over 100 miles of dark fiber that were laid back in the Obama administration. Dark fiber is internet access, like broadband wires that have not been connected to what's called the last mile, aka from the road to your house.
Wait, so it was just sitting there? It wasn't doing anything? It wasn't connected to any houses?
That's correct.
That's amazing.
It was lost in paperwork.
Jeez.
Because, it was a public works project and they just had changed the title holders.
Yeah, okay.
I checked in with Nate 2 or 3 weeks ago and I asked him for an update and he's still following up on it. So this is still in development, but the
Wow.
point is there's hundreds of miles, at least 800 miles of dark fiber that is connected in the southern tier, and it's just not hooked up to homes. And if I lived in the southern tier and I found out that I was living along one of those routes, I would be mad as heck.
Yeah. I hope they get connected up down there.
I hope so too. It's just absolutely crazy to think about that. The point is, we might not have ever uncovered that discovery if it wasn't for starting a community of people that want to talk about data.
Yeah, right. So I'd like to transition our discussion into interesting problems or topics that you've worked on. What do you think the most interesting problems are in your field?
That's a great question. I think that we have spent so much time in tunnel vision to look at things like machine learning and AI and learning to code and learning about the best ways to build XYZ product that we have not spent enough time talking to people about how to seek, solicit, and speak data and information. So when you are seeking information, when you're in any company, how do you look for existing information? Like, where do you find existing reports? Really paying attention to how we're teaching people where to seek out information. The next thing is soliciting information. So say you've looked at those existing resources, right, of where people say that information is stored, and you realize the question that you have is not in that repository. Where do you go to ask to get new information? So how do you solicit a report being built? Talking with people about what do you hope to get out of this question? Like, why are you bothering to ask this question in the first place? What are you trying to achieve with this piece of information? And letting the report developer know that, because they can't mind read. So you have to communicate to them what the piece of information is for, how it will be used, what time frame of information that you're looking for. Those kinds of questions are easy but not easy questions when it comes to actually writing them down. And then when it comes to speak data is all about knowing how to communicate effectively with information. If everyone can tell a good data story, right? So your uncle can tell a good story, right? Data literacy is our ability to tell whether or not that story is true, right? You could have a report developer that can give you a report back, but your ability to say whether or not that appears valid, if it's using a single source of truth, like where they're using their sources from and how it works, and being able to have those conversations around that information. So if somebody gives you the answer to the universe, on a piece of paper, but you don't know how to act on it, you can't make those grand changes. Don't put it off to the side. I've seen it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that, of people building things and somebody says, okay, great. And they get the report and then they don't use it. And the way that you can tell if they're using it is there's insights reports for Power BI things.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So you can see how frequently people are using the reports. The trick there is asking them when you're building the report, how frequently do you anticipate using this report? So that way if they're like, oh, every day, and then you look back and they've only opened it twice, maybe you should just give them a call and be like, hey, how's that report working out for you? Is there any changes we can make to it? Usually, if you design it well and you design it to be actionable, and by that I mean, so say I look at a finished data visualization and I've had that conversation with the person that's going to use it to say, okay, once you find out X number, what are you going to do if it's not where it's supposed to be? They go, oh, I'm going to email this department. So what you can do is on that visual is actually program a button to email X department.
Mm-hmm.
So on that same visual, you don't have to go anywhere. Here's the what, the so what, the now what. The what is sales are declining. So what? If they continue to decline, we will shut down. Now what? You should call marketing. Like, here's the number.
So, is there anything in particular you'd like to talk about, or an issue that you'd like to raise that we haven't already touched on yet?
The other thing that I would recommend for everyone is if you are just excited about information, but you don't know where to start, and SQL might scare you, it might not, you might be awesome at it, come to our Buffalo Business Intelligence meetings. Our next one is going to be the first Wednesday of December 2021. It's going to be all virtual. To find the dates for this, you can look on eventbrite.com and just type in Buffalo Business Intelligence, or you can follow me on LinkedIn. But come check those out. Make those events for free, because I am just like you, someone who has student loan debt that has been trying to learn this field, that just has a passion for helping other people and just wants to learn more things and doesn't want to pay $300 for a course where I can get the same information from just talking to a peer.
Well, great. Thanks. Kim, thank you so much for joining us today. And to all of our listeners, if you haven't already checked out our previous podcasts, they're available wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information about starting your career as a data scientist, go to dataanalytics.buffalostate.edu. Don't forget to subscribe so that you get notifications each time we release a new episode of Buffalo State Data Talk.